select like we level pre-election right now with like we're right now having another episode in like the field of like how things go like and this is especially but for like even though right now like Lisbeth and Dustin and all of them are like around Will and even Joyce as well is like right there in front of Will like I'm looking like Will who's like right now standing in that bottom like state that I'm looking right now it's in front of the it would be that right now that as Will is standing in that broken like state that the monster within that will be not taken over from within will be that going through like the sounds of that will be taking control of that with that body and mind. It's definitely my brain pressure. Right now, it's definitely my brain pressure. So like I'm thinking that definitely that two spider like monster right now would be exactly like how Will had seen from like the real world, seen that giant spider like monster in like the parallel world, like that giant spider like monster right now would be definitely present in like the parallel world, exactly where Will had seen it. It's definitely my prediction. And I'm like the presence of that giant giant spider like monster, which would be like the fully matured final complete form of like these like monsters which whose like initial size who initially would be of the size of stars. It's the another thing. So like I'm thinking like these monsters like because maybe there being like multiple monsters like dark size like monsters grown from the temple like about the that so like I'm thinking like right now like these monsters that will be grown from the temple like they select the person of like the can try to like monster lab extremely close by just in like the parallel world in that Hawkins school itself in like the parallel world. I'm looking at that giving that I'm looking at that training on the dark like monster that will be grown from the temple will be getting to be reflection like the person the design to try to like monster and that will be giving these monsters like so much of strength and I'm looking this will be like the first time that I was looking tiny monsters will be lag about to take control of when during daytime instead of being able to so like I'm doing like right now for like these monsters like even though it is right now surrounded by my Lucas and Dustin as well as Joe it's like I'm doing like right now itself like will totally like this like frozen like state of will like I'm doing like will be like transforming into that will all of a sudden right now the morning will totally opening his eyes and I'm looking like it will be he will be like those eyes will be having like an indifferent like kind of like an extreme fear and intensity to that with eyes and I'm looking like at that point that will to be like fully controlled by like temporarily fully controlled by that monster both in like body and mind is like the scenario that I'm looking for. So that way like I'm looking like will at that point like running on for like it's like the scenario that I'm looking and like will be at that point having like all this like superhuman strength of like that monster like me but like that way like I'm looking like at that point Mike Lucas and Dustin as well as Joey is probably being shocked and clearly will at that point like I'm looking like pushing them away pushing them all away with that superhuman strength that I'm looking like will totally running through like the field of like Hawkins sword in that four legs and basically running to like the nearby forest, run too deep into like the nearby forest with like the scenario that I'm going to do learning because like of that it being daytime like otherwise like the monster controlling will would be like desperate to like because it would be like totally affected by like the sunlight like I'm going to be like totally desperate to like get to like dark area as soon as possible so like I'm doing like that monster like controlling it and like they're totally running on for like and hiding deep, entering deep into like the forest that will be that nearby to Hawkins Fort. And I'm looking made that forest being like one of the forest is also like about to that I'm looking so that is like the scenario that I'm looking and still think the member presentation while all this would be happening while we would be like while being controlled by like the monster will be like running look on for like that at that point I'm looking like all the other students in like Hawkins School like I'm looking like them all like seeing this like the scenario that I'm looking that way like I'm looking like once like this whole and I'm looking even at that point it will be like a temporary taking control of like this body by those like monsters and with scenario that I'm looking so like by the time like my camp others would be able to like enjoy to be able to like run after Will and like find and save Will and bring Will back like I'm looking like at that point like I'm looking like the students even and after that, like once like the next day, once that we will be go back to like school, like I'm doing like students will be that even more making fun of the and I'm going like even not only on like Wilson or local but like I'm doing like them for totally putting drawing putting a paper containing a drawing of like will on like for like and like the writing on it might be like zombie or something that you know the brain is and on top of that like I'm doing like the students even more in an aggressive manner than before, like calling the like zombie and give and it was like the scenario that ended up and that resulting in like will only at that point is in fact being extremely angry and frustrated and like sad that it really like when at that point is in fact only running away from school is like the scenario that ended up and like Will's only running away from school and running on taking his bike I mean like running away from school all the way back to his home is like the scenario that I'm looking for the plan. I'm looking from that day on, like, will refusing to let go of the school is also like a good scenario that I'm looking for the plan. I'm looking for the like minimum 20% right now as well that will right now lying to that shows about like Will's like recent episode like about the actually which is only due to like Will being that has been good friend of Dustin and will not wanting like that because like Will knowing that like how such a staff is like that it would only right now having that fear that it will be intense. I got the truth that it is not the truth that about like that existence like definitely Joyce would be like going through like definitely would be ensuring that like to take down like would be around that as the fear that will be having so like definitely to not have that happen that I'm looking at the right now thank that Joyce is definitely part like I'm looking like right now it's definitely something like that Joyce taking out like the paper of drawing person that those had gone through like the grains in that video right like I was different. Definitely I'm looking like course right now like through the current interaction like getting the truth out of it this like the scenario that I'm looking will totally confessing everything even about start with like the scenario to Joyce like the scenario that I'm looking but like I'm looking will totally telling that making Joyce like I'm looking at that point will be repeatedly telling Joyce that basically and even maybe going to the extent of like making Joyce like his mother like promise to him that basically Joyce wants her that like the scenario that I'm looking and then the Joyce totally agreeing to that and promising to Will that she wants her that. But like I'm looking like definitely Joyce would be at that point that would have fixed in her mind to like definitely find that and like take the life of like that creature monster that. It's definitely my friend. So definitely, I'm looking like through Joyce, like I'm looking like Joyce, like through Joyce, like Hopper as well, like, finding out about like this, like the existence of stuff. It's also like a kind of like about into that I'm looking either that or like uh, Joyce by herself, like going through the experience of like by herself, like trying to like uh, sneak into like Dustin's home and basically maybe trying to like get rid of that. It's also like about the paper about the that about so like definitely I'm different like along with like Will's confession, I'm definitely putting like with also confessing about like how he had taken during the recent episode, like unlike how he usually ran away from like the spider like monster, like how he took that box advice of like standing his ground and facing like the monster and that's how that he had gotten close. And like I'm definitely will right now that I'm putting all the to like Joyce and I'm also when that straight away anger and Joyce is like the scenario that I'm that anger getting formed within Joyce towards like for like the first time is like the scenario that I'm going to bring because like uh because from Joyce's point of view at that when Joyce will be totally thinking that and definitely at that when Joyce telling that like uh, telling to Will that like Bob's advice is like wrong and to definitely never take Bob's advice and basically to always run away like the next time it will see that spider like monster to always keep running away from like the monster like and the like Joyce totally trying to make Will understand. It's like the scenario that I'm looking and definitely I'm looking like Joyce will be taking out this anger towards like Bob definitely by the time that Bob will do that returning home like the returning like Joyce is almost like the scenario that I'm looking. So like definitely I'm looking like they are being like a quarrel between like a total quarrel between like Joyce towards like Bob for like Bob advising Will and I'm looking like Joyce totally kind of like in a way like warning Bob to like never give any advice to any of Bob's advice to Will. It's also like an angel scenario that I'm looking at. That way, like the initial spark between like the whole relationship between like Joyce as well as Bob will be like happening on this very day or night reflect the scenario that I'm looking at the and I'm the impression right now. And definitely authority my good friend like for Will right now to like confess the truth about like the existence of stuff to that Joyce right now. But the next the number of that Joyce that in the local domain was only that will making Joyce that makes that promise to will that we never have that, but like definitely Joyce not definitely not at all intending at all to keep that promise and like Joyce that basically that Amazon Joyce secretly sneaking in or like either with like opportunities or not like Amazon like regardless like Amazon like Joyce like probably trying to like eliminate and take the life of that relentlessly in like a relentless and forgotten manner like it's another that I'm doing until eventually I'm also Dustin finding out about this and basically I'm also like during one of those attempts of like choice to like take that life from like dark totally ending up escaping just like the scenario that I'm doing escaping and running into like the forest nearby or to like market forest like the scenario that I'm doing and that way like Dustin permanently like for the finding that Liam was doing like through such a manner of like Dustin losing that is like the scenario that I'm doing and that totally creating an extreme dislike from Dustin's side towards like for when it was like the scenario that I'm doing and like I'm doing like Dustin totally in front of like Mike and it was like I'm doing Dustin totally blaming with and I was like totally like I'm doing like a hurtful manner like I'm doing Dustin like doing things like kind of side due to like the sadness of like losing the member of like Dustin totally temporarily losing his like empathetic side and usually that going over the limit and I was like Dustin totally talking about Will in like a hurtful manner maybe that as if like Will is strange something along the lines of different like Dustin talking to that Will in like talking about Will in like the hurtful manner over like the sadness of like losing that the scenario that I'm looking and I'm this will like happen while that Mike loses as well as like matching with the reference like the scenario that I'm looking at definitely I'm looking that totally will be thoroughly triggering Mike as well as Lucas and I'm looking them both that would be shouting back at like Dustin and basically that there definitely I'm going to be a fight and a quarrel between like the friends and I'm wondering that or the thing and like Dustin temporarily leaving like the group, leaving the gang along with like Maxine, like the scenario that I'm looking and from that point on I'm looking like the scenario to be like Dustin and Maxine by themselves like together like searching for would be like relentlessly searching for and is like the scenario that I'm looking and that way like there being that temporary separation in like that and split in the gang of friends like the scenario that I'm liberating and while like Mike Lucas will be always by Will's side is like the scenario by while Mike would always by Will's side and I was looking like during that time like I'm looking that it would be like not exactly loose of that would be like most that time was to be playing the role of like the mediator is also like a eventually playing the role of the mediator trying to like bring the gang back together. Is like the scenario that I'm talking while Mike would be like thoroughly cross with that stuff and like insensitive behavior towards that with that and when that it would be that for because it's being extremely hard to like maybe uh to convince Mike to like basically to forgive Dustin is like the scenario that I'm looking and eventually I'm looking for Dustin definitely I was looking like setting in as if like I was definitely just usually feeling that guilt that he was passing with is also like an easy scenario that I'm so like there was sort of like a temporary like in like in the gang and like in their friendship and it's like the scenario that I'm looking for the membership. Like the name of the membership right now with like score well like it confessing to like choice that basically is that he sees like the spider like monster like or basically like basically that would definitely be that the certain like bad thing definitely people that sees that sharp like that beginning stages of that data stages of like this like giant spider like monster like growing from within will just definitely never the image so like it will be trying to like take over the different that these monsters that these tiny monsters from growing within will be like trying to like take full control over like its body and mind so that like it could like throw will like it would like totally uh, keep and feed itself and basically so that like basically eventually that these monsters will be planning on like basically once it would be like growing and reaching the stage where it will be able to like which will be able to like survive in like the outside world for it to then destroy its body and basically that come out will be that these monsters like intent right now it's definitely my preference. So like it would be like attempt of like this monster that there would be like trying to control will that like the reason for like will totally feeling these monsters everywhere, especially my secondary impression. So definitely my secondary impression that I'm still thinking on this that like definitely still eventually I'm considering like it will definitely be 11 that would be then saving Will. And right now it's like Joyce like given that promise to Will that like she will definitely save Will. Considering definitely it will be eventually I'm considering it will get through 11 itself like I'm considering like 11 eventually I'm considering like will condition getting far too worse and will totally permanently getting being taken control by like the monsters from the same will. It's like the eventual scenario that I'm considering and get like I'm considering eventually was like Mike Lucas and Dustin, and by then like Mike Lucas and Dustin and all of them would have reunited with like 11 and then like all of them once again like on their search for like the missing builders. So like they can even scenario that I'm doing, but like I'm like eventually finally once they will be fighting will like I'm doing like it will be through 11 that I'm doing like 11 like by now like I'm doing like with all these years passing and 11 like keeping on using her superpowers like I'm doing like 11 skills at like using her superpowers with that absolute precision might have lack and intensity might have grown along with her age as well in the minimum range. So and with like her like aging like and also like that as well might have caused like her body to better be able to like even handle her like intense like superpowers as well. Especially when with temperature. So like definitely it's like eventually it would be I'm still thinking about that eventually it would be definitely 11 using her superpowers with that absolute precision would be like destroying like the monsters growing from within with right before like the situation would be critical and right before like the monsters would be trying to like basically destroy Will's body and then come out like right just right before that episode like 11 would be like something like using superpowers with that absolute precision and destroying all of like the monsters that would be like growing from within Will. It's definitely my personal and trust. And that way, like it would be 11 once again, that would be like very good. It's definitely my personal and trust. So that's definitely my personal impression right now was like 11, like returning back to like Hopper's house and then leave Hopper straight away. So that anger and shouting at like 11. I'm considering right now things do not at all go smoothly at all. And I'm considering like that the soul characters current swarm within that Hopper and 11 numbers were resulting in like 11 totally running away from like 11 totally using her superpowers and attacking Hopper and like 11 totally uh, and 11 totally then like running away from that house is like the scenario that I'm doing and then I'm going like 11 maybe like going deep into that market box and for the time being I'm also like 11 would be like deciding to and 11 would be like 11 will be venturing deep into that market and I'm also predicting like that house where 11 is in right now with like Hopper, like basically that house would be like deep within like market for it's also the limit with the limits. So like I'm doing like 11 attacking Hopper out of 11 like extreme rages, which is like 11 like current situation is like basically 11 totally changing that basically then Mike has totally forgot 11 and basically has replaced 11 with like Maxine. So like I'm doing like simply like on top like just like that 11 is right now in such an extreme kind of like a disappointed and sad situation and like Amazon like that anger resulting in that like resulting in like 11 right now totally attacking Hopper. 11 will be right now totally fed up with like controlling of 11 as well. So like I'm using like 11 right now totally using her superpower and attacking Hopper and like 11 totally running away from like that house and I'm like 11 will be venturing deep into like Marwood Forest and eventually ending up at like castle bias like the scenarios that I'm also bringing at 11 temporarily deciding to like stay at like castle bias like all by herself to like change the scenario that I'm also bringing and of while all this would be have and like that way like I'm bringing like what offer like totally having like being clueless as to like where as to like 11's whereabouts and to like offer can't like get his like subordinate team to like collectively search for like 11 and basically like Hopper all by himself like for Hopper all by himself like searching far and wide through like for like looking for 11 is like the scenario that I'm looking like so that way like I'm looking like for Hopper like being extremely sad and worried like I'm looking like for Hopper like I'm looking like it will be once again like kind of like an extremely like kind of like to a certain extent, it would be like numbers of like it would be kind of like a traumatic event because like probably once again getting that feeling as it like that feeling of like that he had felt back when he had lost his dog to Sahara, like I'm like But when like Hopper after not being able to like find 11 from that point on, like after like 11 going into like Hopper, going through that very same kind of traumatic kind of like a feeling, and then Hopper like only being desperate and hoping to like find, and with that hope to like find 11, like Hopper relentlessly like searching for 11 uh, everywhere in the town of Hopkins is like the scenario that Ambassador was like Ambassador image, and Ambassador still Ambassador taking a while before like Hopper would eventually be able to would be like reunited with like 11 is also like a living scenario that Ambassador image. Like the film Ambassador impression right now was like solely due to that Hopper not being able to see 11 as like a child, and it's only that way not being able to like handle things smoothly and like think from like 11's point of view, and Hopper totally messing things up and to 11 totally screaming I'm looking definitely I'm looking with 11 right now and Hopper also destroying the TV, the only form of entertainment that basically 11 had, basically definitely I'm looking 11 with 11 also following Hopper as Papa, definitely I'm also 11 would be with 11 right now setting off the dog to the throne, I'm looking eventually I'm also once Hopper totally eventually calming down, and Hopper totally feeling that absolute guilt that he had handled things extremely wrong with the element and some definitely thing Hopper totally eventually realizing it's scenario that I'm referring at. I'm also Hopper totally then eventually coming back and basically knocking on to that door of the room of 11, but I'm referring by then 11 would have totally left through the window, 11 would have totally left that house of Hopper, the scenario that I'm just about to correct, and by those the the ambition right now with 11 right now going through such an extreme suffering of an emotional state, I'm also definitely this eventually I'm also eventually culminating in basically 11 not only running off from the house of Hopper, but I'm also after running off from the house of Hopper, I'm also 11 while 11 would be would be hiding in the castle fires, basically, and staying in the castle fires. At that point, I was 11 totally overthinking and basically about all the recent incidents, about the not only about Hopper, basically and shouting at 11 and basically destroying her for only TV and everything, and on top of that I was 11 would be getting so frustrated thinking about that, and on top of that I'm bringing also the memory about uh 11 seeing Mike along with Maxine as well, would be showing up into 11's mind at that point of view. So I'm looking this false collectively same anger and sadness and frustration of 11 at that point, totally resulting in 11 eventually taking the decisions to basically to take the life of Maxine, which is an eventual scenario that I'm looking. And with that intent, I'm 11 I'm looking maybe like uh I'm looking maybe 11 with that is such a intent to take Maxine's life, 11 maybe it will be on the 356th day of Mike 11 going the same. And Mike and others not being 11, maybe it will be on the 350th day, the anniversary day, I'm looking 11 might be deciding to basically to take vaccine, also an initial possible scenario that I'm preparing. Because so if that happens, then number for next match we are going to basically 11 even after running away from Hopper's home, basically 11 in that extreme anger and emotional state, 11 not even bothering to trying to communicate with Mike at all. From the day after that, it's the scenario that I'm looking at. So that way, even not realizing about Mike, who would be each and every single day would be using a radio phone, trying to maintain communication, to establish communication with 11 to see if 11 is alive or not. So from that day on, I'm looking 11 due to 11 not putting in the effort, 11 not realizing that Mike was constantly trying to uh, make contact with 11 with the minimum with 11. So that way I'm also 11 on the 356th day, I'm sitting 11 of the deciding to basically take Maxine's life, and I'm also trying maybe 11 that way with that specific intent villains intend to take Maxine's life, 11 totally in an extremely indifferent manner, an extremely serious and dangerous kind of a manner, I'm also trying range of strength like an aura like between like 11 only walking up to like next thing is series 11 like walking up to that hopping school that day. Like it's a scenario that I'm looking at. I'm looking like 11 and I'm bringing that scenario like I'm bringing like it to be was to be a scenario where like Maxine would be somewhere all alone like by herself, maybe like practicing her skating or something like all alone. It's like the scenario at like somewhere at like open school, like the scenario that I'm living. So at that point, like 11's going up there, and like 11 totally like using her superpowers and basically scaring Maxine, and Maxine will be having like absolutely no clue at all as to like what's happening, and then like 11 totally using her superpowers and like kind of like injuring, starting to like injure, will be like starting to like injure and about to take Maxine's life. But like I'm looking, it will be at that point that I'm looking like Mike would be like, and I'm looking maybe that being the scenario in this like Mike would be like shockingly seeing 11 and shockingly realizing that 11 is like alive. Is like the possible scenarios that I was in. But at that point, since I'm like Mike and Mike and all of them like basically struggling to like calm down 11 and stop 11 is like the scenario that I was in. Because like even then like even Mike won't be able to like comprehend as to like what's going on as to like why 11 is like attacking 11 at that point attacking Maxine is like the scenario that I'm in. So like I was like 11 totally using her superpowers and something Maxine, but like I'm looking like before 11 would be like taking Maxine's life, I was like Mike Storming finally getting through to that 11 is like somehow reflecting into the scenario that I'm going to bring. And I'm going to bring that like the other positive that I'm going to bring like it's not through the radio phone that like Mike will be shocked me finding out that 11 is still alive. Then I'm going to bring this would be like the other positive like how like the reunion between Mike and 11 will be like happening. It's like the other positive scenario that I'm going to bring and I'm going to right now. Like, but even friends right now with like Johnson right now returning home, like being my time and like the house cleaning as is like it's them saying like definitely on friends right now is that basically the current situation that I'm wondering for like Johnson like something around the house for like Will and Joyce and I was like initially Johnson like opening the door to like Will's room. And then was wondering there like I'm wondering Johnson getting like the biggest shock with like him seeing like the portal on like the wall on one of the wall of like Will's room like basically that bottle slowly fully closing at that point. That being like the biggest shock for like Jonathan is like getting the possible scenario that I'm doing because like exact solely due to because like my dream is that maybe solely due to that Bob's that advice of basically standing will having to like stand his ground against like the monsters and everything. Like I'm looking like definitely that way, like that act of like will doing that and like will like or that like aura dark aura of like that monster like following will like I'm looking that might have resulted in like all those like the that aura might be like and like that's that aura and like the then spider was like I'm looking like this entire time as like we was running away from like the giant spider and everything like I'm looking like at that point like I'm looking like Will might have been able to like escape from like the monsters growing within Will being able to like take full control of Will but like I'm looking at the acting like Will staying his ground and letting and facing that monster might have resulted in that uh, as it resulted in like that or swallowing will like something like it might have also resulted in like the monsters growing within will like getting seriously greater control over that will like body and mind disciplinary damage and I'm like it might have still stayed dormant like during the daytime but like I'm like since currently right now the time is like night like I'm like definitely during night time especially since like the monsters prefer like darkness and prefer like during the night time like these monsters will be getting even stronger even if so like I'm looking like as it turned night like I'm looking like Bill might have been like even earlier than before and I'm looking right now like the time that Jonathan would have right now returned back to his home would be like around 8 o'clock so like I'm looking um definitely. And I'm still thinking about the prediction that like during 8 o'clock there will be that energy spike happening where in like Prana's lab and basically like and that energy spike causing like the folding between like the real world and like the parallel world to like come closer during that for 8 o'clock energy spike time periods durations that time and like the scenario that I was referring. So like I was like most likely I was referring like what might have happened would be like around 8 o'clock, like I'm considering like will might have been like fully gotten taken control by like the monster grown within Will and I'm considering like And I'm wondering maybe it would be like a temporary control for like the more likely possible that I was doing. Yet like during the time period of like the temporary full control of like with body by like the monster doing the thing will like I was doing like will might have totally like I was like Joyce might have been in the kitchen or something and I was like Will might have like totally indifferent will being controlled by like the monster like might have sort of behind like Joyce and another like Will might have maybe like or like another one Will and Joyce might have been at like Will's room and basically Will might have like totally at an instant like might have totally acted in like in different manner and create a scary manner but like Joyce not even being able to like see even though it will be Will himself but like Joyce won't be able to like see Will at all in Will because like of like how different Will might have acted at that point when being have like body and mind hijacked by like the monster stuff because of at that point like Will might have like, totally affected Joyce and might have created like while being controlled by the monster like Will might not only affected Joyce and created like the portal on the with like the powers of like the monster most likely having like intensified after like Will might have been swallowed by like stood his ground and that way might have gotten swallowed by like the power of like the monster like and like Will might be after that like Will might have gained like the power to like create portals on the wall. Just like the faceless monster supplement rendered like I'm doing it that way like Will might have affected Joyce and like created like a portal onto the wall and might have like left into like the parallel world along with like Joyce might have been what might have happened and that way like after like them leaving to like the parallel world will take abducting and taking Joyce to like the parallel world like the portal would be like slowly closing and so like I'm going as like the portal would be about to like fully close would be like the point where right now like as like Jonathan would be right now the will be opening lecture or like very support that him totally seeing that portal slowly closing. It's like the scenario that I'm doing that way like Jonathan getting that app with shop. Like the scenario that I'm going to bring right now and not the like the most likely possibility that I'm looking at, like the least likely possibilities will be for like Joy having like possibly having like after like Will's confession to like those like Richard confession to like those possibly having taken like the drawing as well as like the videotape as well as the drawing of like spider as well as like the videotape evidence as well uh, to show like evidence of like the spider like monster shaped rings as well and all that to Dr. Owens like I was saying that maybe Joyce like having left with like will to like to meet Dr. Owens in like the energy laboratory is like the other possible scenario that I'm going to do and not the brain. So like that possibly being the reason for like I'm going to say like so like Jonathan not finding like Joyce I think right now. And so like the other possible scenario that I'm going to go and not the brain. But minimum with temperature right now with like Jonathan right now seeing when sleeping with like Joyce and basically like with eyes like basically switching in like closed eyes like sitting in like an entrepreneur like that minimum with temperature that like at that point what Jonathan might have seen might have been like not at all will might have been like the most of like within Will like having full control over like Will's mind and body. Like that might have been like the monster that might have been lying there right beside Joyce at that point, and not at all Will. Definitely might have pretend like Will might have only had the appearance of Will at that point, but like it might have been that during that time it might have been like that most of that might have been in full control of like, the body and mind of Will. Definitely might have been his like Johnson, definitely might have been so like since like these monsters like would be like most likely coming would be like the most active during night time because of like these monsters like preferring darkness like like definitely since so that would be because like it would because it was like nighttime that this was the reason for like due to like these monsters being the most active during the nighttime and during the nighttime like these monsters like basically being able to have like the maximum control over like this body and might will be like the reason for like with eyes like twitching during that time like with eyes like basically closed eyes like basically twitching in like a non-stop manner is like my secondary impression right now. Like the name of the impression right now is like Nancy getting on the car with like Jonathan, but currently Nancy will be on her way to like basically to meet like Barbara's mother and confess to like Barbara's mother to finally get that weight of like success. But like I'm wondering that not happening. It's like the scenario that I'm sitting on to like the purpose like a Colonel team like having or her like through that phone conversation like basically. So they're starting like with like runners like the remaining members of like runners team having heard like basically that phone conversation between like Nancy and Barbara's mother. Like Liam was different like while Barbara's mother would be on her way to that meeting spot that was like told by Nancy to like Barbara's mother, like while Barbara's mother would be on her way to that location, like I mean, like Barbara's mother definitely would be getting into like an accident and like ending up dying in that accident. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at. That accident would be like a an accident that would be created by like surrendering the purpose letter in the state. It's definitely also possibly under like the orders of like Dr. Cohen, it's definitely Michael Berry and Michael Berry for like for Nancy to like on top of that Nancy's like already drowning in that guilt of like basically of like Nancy's like involvement in like Barbara's just like I was and but like I'm still sure I was trying to that Barbara still would be like okay and I would be like okay Barbara's like the parallel version of like Barbara in like the parallel world that like 11 might have totally seen in that dark void like place like the actual Barbara from like the real world would be trapped somewhere in like the parallel world and still would be alive. Definitely and then would be like probably finding that Barbara in like the different regions definitely one of the tradition. But for the current present like like for Nancy like on top of like her only believing that because of her Barbara had died like everything on top of that like everything like Nancy also like after like finding out shockingly about like the death of like Barbara's mother on her while she was on her way to like the meeting spot with like Nancy where like Nancy was about to confess the truth involving Barbara's like that's like they were saying like so like I'm just like without much great delay like I'm just like Nancy would be like shockingly realizing finding out about like Barbara's mother that like I'm just like Nancy would be like usually feeling that strong guilt even on top of the already existing extreme guilt like Nancy would be like totally would be like extremely traumatized like while feeling while she would be having that feeling that possibly like it's being like the remaining of like Bernard's theme that might have like resulted in like uh the death of like that might have caused like the death of like Barbara's mother and so like Nancy maybe like that way like come to the conclusion that it might have been solely due to that phone call by Nancy to like Barbara's mother alone that like Barbara's mother as well right now might have died to be along the lines of like a conclusion that way like Nancy totally feeling like drowning in an even more guilt and feeling along the lines of like solely due to like Nancy like not only her best friend Barbara, but also her mother as well, that has ended up by be along the lines of that extreme guilt and like guilt feeling that like Nancy would be having like and I was like taking like I'm going to like taking a serious while for like Nancy to like recover to be able to recover from that and throughout that and that time I'm going to like it will be Jonathan that would be that absolute uh, giving that Nancy that absolute comfort and strength while Amazon like Steve would be on the other hand would be like won't be able to like properly empathize with like Nancy and won't be able to like properly understand like the depth of like Nancy's like suffering like scenario that Amazon. So like I'm wondering maybe this situation like putting in like Nancy totally like preferring to like spending more time with like Jonathan than Steve. And as well as like I'm feeling like the situation also resulting in like the current quarrel, slight quarrel between like Nancy, between like Steve towards like Nancy, eventually resulting into like an even more like a serious quarrel between like Nancy and Steve. It's also like scenario that I'm living in. At that point, like Nancy like spending more and more time with like Jonathan. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. And I'm also like continuing with the machine like Basara mother as well would be like any of time she would be like the remaining of the petrol steam. Then I'm about to find like at that point like Nancy would only feeling that like along the lines that I'm about to bring like scenario where like Nancy maybe even feeling that like along the lines of the like she has at that point nothing to lose at all and basically Nancy totally in a of like a dedicated ending up being in like a dedicated kind of like a mindset to like basically to dedicate the rest of her life into like ensuring that like Prana's like the remaining members of like Prana's team like is like thoroughly destroyed like basically with that intent like I'm like an extremely cold Nancy like I'm like an extremely cold version of Nancy along with like Jonathan. I'm Jonathan as well like probably would be of the same mindset as with like Nancy and like Jordan and Nancy like determined to like to give up until they completely destroy like the remaining of that Brenner's team. and all that. Definitely my personal reaction. So like I'm looking like eventually that name was like after like and especially my mother mentioned that like after like that's Barbara's mother like yes, I'm looking like definitely Marai Bowman like definitely I'm looking like the Barbara's mother might have probably even told about this meeting to like her husband as well. It's also like about that I'm looking so like I'm looking like usually like Marai Bowman like I'm looking like totally figuring that out and everything and I'm looking like definitely Marai Bowman that way like come to the conclusion as for like the possibility of like Nancy having some sort of like an involvement in like Barbara that not only Nancy, maybe like Nancy and Jonathan having possibly having some sort of like an involvement in like Barbara will be along the lines like of like a conclusion that like Murray Bowman might be at that point coming to and I'm different from that point on like Murray Bowman totally on Nancy and Jonathan's tail and always like spying and following that is like and stuff and then it's like the scenario that I'm going to and my brother Ambush. I remember pretty much able to bring like eventually once like Nancy and Johnson would be like at that point that determined to that destroy to not give up until they destroy like ensure the destruction of like the remaining members of like Paranos team. Like basically at that point like during their whole entire attempt to like trying to like achieve that like like Murray Bowman totally being like a part of all that attempts and everything. Like as like in like the manner of like his business be flying and following and stuff Nancy and Jordan as and trying like government trying to like figure out as to like what they are trying to do like what Nancy and Jordan are up to and everything is like leave at the time. So that way like I'm like maybe usually maybe along with like Nancy and Jordan maybe like Murray Bowman as well maybe during the whole attempt like maybe into them eventually trying to like infiltrate into like lab and basically trying to like that way like do the damage from within or like to steal and get a lot of evidence from that lab and basically to file a case against like the lab and everything. Maybe like along this like the claim was very usually for like an attempt by Nancy and Johnson. The claim was very usually happening where like they were already infiltrating into that right like infiltrate into like to like the NRP laboratory. Not to like currently belong to black holes and then it did only belong to Owens and then was during that whole infiltration and position like along with like Nancy and Johnson, like Gordon as well do fully like steadily following like Nancy and Johnson, spying on Nancy and Johnson, Bowman as well getting captured by foreigners team and them all getting imprisoned in like for like for a while in that energy laboratory of like Owen which like living the scenario that ambassador of the game of things. Like the minimum 3% right now with like choice right now like checking winds like temperature. Yeah, I'm looking like right now in like thermometer I'm looking like in an extremely strange kind of way like to the extent of like a low temperature is what I'm looking for like will the thermometer right now will be showing that like winds temperature right now. Just remember that will be because of like the motor flowing from within will especially because of like the bad is like the and cold place like mentioned that will back then like the fact that while he was tracking like bad bird had mentioned that the words of like the bad word being so extremely cold like these monsters will be like so extremely cold blooded and like uh cold blooded monsters and everything like their temperatures will be like extremely very indoor and their temperature would be like the temperature of will that would be right now would be like shown through like the thermometer. Especially when the president and those like maybe Joy thinking along the lines that it's like maybe the thermometer is broken. So like I'm looking like Joy getting another thermometer and basically like checking its temperature again. And at that point, like I'm looking like Joy is getting that ultimate shock as to like basically something is going on actually like if that basically in that will force situation is not just excluded to like will being able to like see like the parallel world from like the real world alone, but like even more depth to the seriousness of like the situation that will be something that's actually going on with that with body like basically. So it's totally realizing that and the super like will be happening through this like current government in this like scenario that I'm the name of the current question right now as for like the plant right now talking about like all living things that basically instinctively responding to that phase of like I'm considering right now I'm considering like the same thing happening right now in like Will's case like as Joyce is about to like basically give a hot bath like I'm considering like definitely will amplifying the monster that would be like growing from within will amplifying like would be able to like sense like the cheese from like the path and amplifying like definitely it would be like stopping will from not slipping into like that path like the scenario that I'm looking for quickly. So like that's like the different scenario that I'm looking for. So like I was like will won't be like knowing why, but like I'm looking like will totally no matter how much like those skills with like will like I'm looking will totally partly refusing to like basically even touch like the purpose like the scenario that I'm doing and that way like I'm doing the story like from this point on I'm looking like will totally because like I'm in terms of it should be all and I'm looking this and that time like I'm will might have even eaten like warm food and everything until now is definitely not the it might have been precisely after like Will taking the advice of like Bob and he will facing that monster while Will had gotten swallowed by like the dark or of like the monster like it might be from that point on but like the monster presence within Will might be like the monster growing within Will like it's like control and it's like for presence from within Will might have been like instantly gotten like simply greater so like I'm looking right now definitely will totally thoroughly avoiding anything that's like warm or hot. It's like the scenario that I'm looking, not just bugs, but like I'm looking like even food and everything. Like I'm looking like will totally strictly like avoiding like they really because like the monster from within will like would be causing will feel like to cause that aversion towards like anything warm and basically I'm looking like will eating cold food from uh that from this very day on definitely my temperature and definitely Joy should be seriously for Joy should be like seriously extremely worried for like with it's like the scenario that I'm looking on the right and my brain but bring like the situation getting even worse for like Bill because like I'm looking like definitely because my great like I'm bring like especially with like Bill just now recently like had basically had had an episode on the Hawkins Gold field itself like I'm looking like I don't know if you might have seen that. It's definitely my motivation and I'm looking definitely still my motivation for like them bullying Bill and I'm looking like um that looking like would be like constantly happening along with like the characterization of Will, where like Will will be avoiding anything and everything that's like even hot or warm due to like the monster grown within Will like having a lot of more presence from within Will. It's definitely my motivation. So like that where it's resulting in like Will not even stepping out from his house and not even like will not even being able to like handle the sun this like given scenario where I'm to bring that way like even within Will's home like I'm like will totally that even that basically possibly even turning off all lights and basically even within his house itself like I'm looking like will totally like basically not being able to like handle like the lights and like will turning off will enter the room like basically always like staying locked up into the room in like dark in that absolute darkness by turning off the lights and everything just like and even during daytime like, as well I'm looking like will totally locking himself into like a room and like shutting off all the windows trying to make it that as dark as possible for build. And I was by this time like in the like see like all these like incidents and the different like definitely would be like eventually bring about that absolute clarity within like kind of like a certain level of extreme clarity within like George as to like what possibly will be happening with like when that basically like the possibility of like the monster itself like possibly either thrown from within will or like trying to take control of will and trying to turn will into like a monster like along such lines. So that much extent terms of like choice would be eventually would be getting a clarity towards its definitely Michael's the younger itself. So like that way like I was like eventually like the whole situation is built that and then like that way like I was when Joyce totally eventually bring Will to like Owen and I was like even then like I was like this whole session but like Owen's like I was like definitely even after like Joyce we told all the that videotape as well as like the throwing of like the fat monster and everything like I was still Owen's like totally messing around and basically not wanting out of fake actors like that's all like just like a random coincidence and along the lines like it would be like totally trying to like turn it into like a silly thing and basically as if like it's not it's has nothing to do with anything and along the lines and I was from that point I was doing most likely I was getting fed up with like the person with like Dr. Owens and I was like instead like it was totally eventually resulting in like basically at that point might be when like George would be totally So definitely the same question right now with like Joyce right now being so desperate to like basically to get the information to like Hopper to inform Hopper about like the grains on the spider like grains on like the TV and like spider like monster like everything is will peace and like everything like not just being like nightmare but like it's actually the positive like that it's actually is like an actual situation going on with like with and everything like as like Joyce will be like desperate to like get this information to like Hopper like I'm just like eventually I'm also putting like once like we're to be getting this information to like pop up. And I'm also putting like once like slowly eventually wind will be like slowly starting to like avoid or all of this like light sources and everything like even not stepping out to like to that way to like avoid sunlight and basically even sitting in like the dark into the room and everything like I'm also putting like eventually like through joy like while Hopper will be like finding out about all this like I'm also putting like definitely eventually I'm also most likely Hopper most likely at that point totally to save will the label and like pop up that totally revealing to like Joyce alone that basically 11 is still alive. And that way like I'm looking like at that point like pop up like and Joyce like the only thing is that basically that the person of like the person of like 11 being a like save will. So like that way like I'm looking like eventually as like Hopper and would be taking Hopper and Joyce would be taking Will to like the uh, taking Will to and I was looking at how they would be even transporting and taking Will to that house deep in that forest. Like I was looking like even that I was looking like um even like the way leading to that forest like I mean like they would be like totally that covering up like the windows of like the car and trying to like give as much of like a darkness as possible from within like the car to like what will like to scenario that I was looking but like I'm saying, by the time like they will be bringing Will to like Hopper's that house deeper in like the forest, like after the by then like 11 would have been fed up with like Hopper's that like 11 would have like ran away from that house, like that situation. That that it's been dilemma kind of like a situation that would be happening at that point for not only Hopper but also for like not only for Hopper concerning like his worries over like 11, but also for like Joyce as well, concerning like the worry of that Will as well. Like this, like them at that point will be having the last hope at that 11 being like the only possibility of like 11 being like the only person that was might be able to like save Will. And basically 11 at that point is going to saying that and like that would be like an eventual possible dilemma that number like or like a situation, particular situation number like that hope Joyce would be like eventually facing a selective scenario that I'm delivering and definitely on the preemption right now with Black Hawk right now showing his attitude to like even instead of saying that sorry for like the previous night like I'm different like definitely my preemption maybe might be Hopper's ego or like maybe it might be Hopper maybe thinking along the lines of like basically if he says sorry to like Eleven that Hopper might be fearing like the possibility that like basically that might not yield like the results that Hopper wants for 11. It should be for like 11 to like stay safe and not venture out from like the house until it's safe for like 11 to like basically to that go. It's definitely my friend. Maybe that might be also like a bottle development. Definitely, but still my impressions that solely due to like right now like Hopper like showing that whole not saying that sorry to that not that not saying that sorry to like 11 like sorry to that and like 11 who might have been the who was like already fed up like the previous night itself and yet had made it all the way to like the morning without leaving the house. Multiple like on top of all the like multiple like with like 11 not even getting that sorry from Hopper and instead like Hopper even kind of like showing like an attitude kind of like a thing with like 11 numbers but in that would be like the last pro. Definitely my book ambition for 11 is definitely my book ambition and I was definitely like on this very day when by the time like Hopper would be returning back and I was like Hopper returning back as soon as like Hopper would be like and I was like on this very day I was like Hopper straight away like I was definitely Joyce would be repeatedly calling and trying to like reach Hopper and I was definitely as like Hopper would be setting up like I'm going without much delay or like I'm doing like after getting like the call from Joyce and I'm like them taking that will with like the Joyce showing Hopper like the taste evidence and everything and the drawing and things right of the taste evidence the grains of like the spider in like the tape and everything like Joyce will be showing Hopper and I was like while Hopper will be seeing that I'm like Hopper totally would be like kind of like in a mindset of like actually of like the possibility of like it not being just like some nightmare that like will be going through. Like I'm wondering like Hopper kind of kept being convinced like by one like definitely I was wondering Hopper will be totally convinced that through that tape in like the while Joseph is drawing that grain in that tape in the shape of like spider as well as like the drawing and everything of like Will and everything like scenario that I'm drawing. And I'm just bringing straight away like them Hopper taking the decision to like basically take Will to like Dr. Owen like the scenario that I'm building. And Ambassador like after like brings Will to like in that way like Ambassador like will totally like even though Will would be like in an extremely reluctant manner yet like Ambassador Will would be like totally brought to that Dr. On. That's only one possibility that I'm looking because like maybe like Will right now would be at that stage would be like Will would be like totally the most of the things Will would be like totally fearing sunlight. So like it's that scenario then I'm looking like the monster from within will like totally controlling that taking that control of Will and like totally preventing like Hopper and Joe from being able to like take Will to like Dr. Owen like the scenario that I'm looking and the like Will totally like very like 11 like but using Will totally using different kind of powers. My question remember is for like either for like will like thoroughly refuse like the most of it will thoroughly refusing to like step out of like that thing. Like by like them not being able to take will to like from provide with like one person scenario that I'm bring. Or like the other possibility that I'm bring is like them taking will to that Owen there. Then it's maybe like while taking will on the car like I'm maybe like will totally being like affected by the sunlight and causing wind to like basically maybe like maybe like stay on the floor area of like the car like basically stated as in the darkness in like the floor area of like the car and I'm bringing joy that so that's of seeing to then like them probably feeling even more worried for it as like this scenario that I'm bringing. That's the my reason for like when like still messing around and like basically that causing like what joys as well as hope to like probably lose their patience and then was like them totally maybe that fuming at like once and really them taking will and basically it's like the scenario taking will back it's like the scenario that I'm playing and then was like on the way back like I'm using like top up like finally creating the group about like 11 like survivors to like George and then they will be take straight away like George will be telling how about to like take uh, that they should like show will to like 11 and see if like she could like save them. So like I'm like as they would be on their way to like Hopper that secret house in the deep within like the box. Like at that point, definitely I'm looking like 11 won't be present there. It's like me mentioned that I'm still thinking about it quickly, and I'm looking for this only due to that even after like 11 like make like even forgiving Hopper and basically even still basically staying in that house even through like the morning. I'm thinking like since like solely due to like Hopper like totally refusing to like say that sorry to like 11 I'm looking like that would be that last pro and everyone would be like by the time like Hopper and those would be like bringing Will to that house of Hopper like and those like there won't be 11 it's like the scenario that I'm holding right now by the time but Lima would be able to right now as for like in like the current basketball match it would be only like a practice basketball match like and I'm going to like especially with like the Maxine like brothers like they brother basically as like all confident as usual like right now the like is like all confidence totally straight away backfiring on him but like the scenario and it is like ego probably getting corrected like by Steve himself just like the scenario that I'm doing because like I'm doing right now totally like but I'm going to stay like totally with the at the limit but like I'm going to stay not responding back in like a mature manner without like attacking or like picking a fight with like that I think for other impossible like instant like Steve totally like deciding to like retaliate by like focusing his like maximum on doing the game and on to like the basketball game and I was gonna Steve in this game like I was gonna like right now with like my kids further making totally fun of like and mocking Steve like I was gonna like Steve totally responding back by like basically in this like practice basketball match like I was gonna like Steve totally performing even better than like my kids further like that sudden spurge of like that absolute performance of the bring that are right now happening within Steve and then only Steve feels that solely due to Steve like I'm like Steve totally leading his team and like totally due to like Steve like expecting performance like I'm like Steve team like totally defeating like Maxine's brother's team in like the basketball is like the scenario that I was referring like that way like I was referring like everyone that would be like from like silence would be like the audience that would be watching like the game like them all like totally laughing like the scenario that I was referring and that totally would be like hurting like the huge ego of like Maxine's brother deeply is like the scenario that I was referring and that was like Maxine's brother like totally feeling extremely frustrated and I was like him totally having that extreme grudge towards Steve at that point, like the scenario that I was in. And I was like Max's brother going to the extreme chief extent of like basically getting revenge on Steve through like basically after like that day after like Steve's class like I'm looking like after as like number two game most likely after like Steve would be like returning back uh Steve would be on his way back to the throne like I'm different like Michael brother like basically showing up on his car and basically like totally attacking Steve and badly injuring Steve is like the scenario that I was about and I wasn't remember. So like the flavor is impression right now as for like the part in which like Nancy and Jonathan right now is like waiting for like Barbara's mother like to go like everything that part and the thing with my team that was like the exact same part where like that woman had basically seen like 11 while 11 just recently had basically left from the role and left that house. Stephanie was very much so like it would be in that very same path that coincidentally like Jonathan and Nancy would be right now waiting for like Barbara's mother. Stephanie was very much so like I'm looking like what the right now was like Tommy totally igniting and fueling like the already existing insecurity within Steve, connecting to like connecting to like the friendship between like Nancy and Jonathan, like I'm looking like solely due to Tommy doing that, like I'm looking like Steve, uh, right now getting like frustrated and like I'm looking like Steve like acting out in such an extremely desperate and insecure manner to the point of like I'm looking like right now Steve and enraged Steve I'm looking right now going up to maybe like going up to like what's going up to like Nancy's home and like I'm looking like Nancy's going straight away telling Steve about like Nancy going up to like Stacy's so like at that point then Steve would be totally straight away assuming that basically with Steve knowing what like Tommy has heard what like with like Steve knowing what like so because of like Tommy having said that that thing information about like Nancy and John that's missing I'm looking like uh the thing that they had told, like I'm assuming like Steve would get only straight away assuming that like what like Nancy's mother would be saying would be like a lie told by Nancy to like Nancy's mother so that like Nancy should like basically hang out with like Jonathan way along the lines like she would be straight away assuming and in the thing that like the scenario that I was looking and then Steve I'm looking like then Steve would be most likely straight away like Steve deciding to like Steve in his mind would be totally thinking of like the possibility of like them either Nancy and he would getting the feeling that like maybe like Nancy and Jonathan might be like spending time together at some part in like the town of Hawkins. Then definitely my mention that like the town of Hawkins would be like an extremely small town. It's definitely my observation. So like there might not be that great many parks in like the town of Hawkins. So like I'm looking like Steve, I'm looking for like maybe Steve that coming to this very same exact path where like Nancy and Jonathan will be like to see if like they are there or not. It's like the one possibility that I'm looking or like I'm looking the other possibility is basically Steve might be trying as like Steve will be trying and like looking around to see like Nancy and Jonathan so like he will be passing by that path where like Nancy and Jonathan will be and like Steve from like the driveway itself like will be seeing like Nancy and Jonathan, spotting Nancy and Jonathan there. Like the scenario that I'm looking and that way like I'm looking as like Nancy and Jonathan be extremely tense and worried, like especially Nancy being both of them would be like extremely tense and worried as for like how to deal like the whole how to present and how to deal that whole confession of like Nancy of like her involvement to like Barbara's mother and everything like while all this would be happening like while they would be so extremely tense like I was like instead of Barbara's mother like Steve showing up there and I'm wondering that maybe Nancy won't be at all in like the mood at all but to deal with like Steve's trauma at all. So like I was wondering Nancy at that point would be like extremely acting in like an extremely uninterested manner towards like Steve and like Nancy would be just wanting like to Steve wanting would be just wanting Steve to like just go away at that point. Especially because of like the only thing in Nancy's mind at that point will be like her twin worry of like basically wanting to of like the whole how to handle like whole confrontation to like the Barbara's mother and everything is definitely my observation that like Nancy won't be at all in like the mood to deal with like Steve. So like I'm thinking Nancy totally in an uninterested manner, like totally telling Steve like go away. So like at that point I was thinking Steve on the other hand, like Steve at that point was straight away assuming that basically so Steve was like a disturbance to like the good time that like Nancy and Jordan's like having. So like Steve totally assuming through such a manner, and basically Steve totally uh quarreling and shouting out at like Nancy at that point of like the scenario that I was like Steve going to that good Steve won't be able to like handle the like emotions, and I was like in an extremely mature manner like I was like at that point Steve totally quarreling with like Nancy and everything, and Nancy would be like even getting even more upset. So like while this war would be happening, and I was like Johnson would be trying to like convince and calm down Steve by like telling Steve that basically there's like no such thing between like Johnson and Nancy. Like Johnson would be like genuinely with that genuine intent would be trying to like make Steve understand and calm Steve down. Like but like on the different like Steve straight away like would be having that extreme like frustration and like kind of jealousy right now. Definitely Steve would be having towards like Johnson. He was like Steve assuming that like Nancy would be in love with Johnson. Stephanie went with the Cambridge. So that resulting in like Steve basically once again like acting indifferently to like Jonathan. Once again that functions that good terms that Steve had until now with like Jonathan, especially with like Steve even I think like buying like a camera for like Jonathan on like the Christmas and everything. So like I was like in the past and everything. So that good term as well breaking and once another one is Steve only creating a scene and a mess and like Steve only like quarreling and with like both Nancy and John but like the scenario that I'm going and while this whole quarrel would be going on I'm positioning uh would be when like I'm like uh would be when I'm like 11 would be like at that point like showing up to that exact location to that exact park because like maybe like say I'm like 11 as well will be fed up with like Hopper not even like in like the next day even after everything Hopper did like Hopper not even bothering to like say sorry that being like the last straw for 11 that like 11 would be like once again leaving the house and I'm like would be like showing up through this very exact same pathway. So like I'm maybe like 11 might be like on through that way like 11 might be planning on like basically going back to like corporate school and basically maybe like taking the life of to attack and take the life of like Master. Maybe like 11 would be like showing up to deciding to like go up to like corporate school. So like I'm since like the way they throw this that park like I'm like 11 at that point like basically showing up to that park and I'm considering at that point like I'm like Nancy and Jonathan being like while they would be in like the middle of that whole quarrel with like Steve like at that point like Nancy and Jonathan being totally shocked at seeing 11 right there is like the scenario that I'm going to do different and my secondary impression. So my secondary impression is that like only my secondary impression while all this like war between like Steve and like Nancy and Jonathan would be like happening like I'm like Barbara's mother like I'm like and I was like Nancy and Jonathan would be waiting and waiting for like Barbara's mother to like show up but like even after like the intended time like I was like Barbara's mother still won't be like showing up like the scenario that I'm referring. So like it will be like while Nancy and Jonathan would be like confused as to like why Lazarus not showing up, that I'm referring he will be showing up and like the whole quarrel will be happening. Definitely my Muslim is like while all this quarrel will be happening, I'm like the situation was like Lazarus mother and referring. To be still I'm thinking to my Muslim that like while Lazarus mother will be on her way to that meeting spot in that park, like I'm like start getting into like an accident, like the scenario that I'm doing, a created accident would be that it would be like the remaining members of like runners came and most likely even Owens like orders to like basically eliminate Barbara's mother. So like in that way, like the remaining members of like runners force like basically creating an accident and resulting in like Barbara's mother's death. Like and so like without realizing this, like I'm supposed to be like Nancy Johnson and Steve would be like totally having their quarrels in that path while 11 would be like totally running into that and basically it's like preventive scenario that I'm supposed to bring about the the impression right now as like Nancy and Johnson right now are like worried and like basically and like carefully observing everyone around them in that path like basically they would be like totally feeling like the possibility of like runners, like the remaining members of like runners team that possibly is like spying on them or like possibly making a move in this like situation of like they are about to like contest like mother might be also along the lines like like Nancy as well as like Johnson Jr. right now feeling and that will be the reason for like them slowly in a worried manner like they are please observing that looking around and observing everyone in that part of the new but like I was like even right now like I'm looking like while Nancy and Johnson are worriedly looking around like the people in like the and observing like, the people in the park like I'm looking like there will be absolutely not even a single member of like Brenner's team remaining members of like among the remaining members of like Brenner's team there won't be even a single person right now present in that park especially my but that is because of like they would be like right now only focused on that creating that villains creating that accident and basically that eliminating Barbara's number. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like the remaining of runners like see like I'm looking, they will be all basically like on their way to like basically create that accident and basically to eliminate that Barbara's number. So like I'm looking like absolutely no one in that runners like remaining would be present in that part right now. It's definitely not the so like the film and the Korean production right now as for like built right now that telling joys as well as Hopper about like build all memories being now memories that happening all at once now like I'm trying to represent the ambos by video to like these monsters that all these monsters for being like interdimensional beings that beings that transcend even time like I'm saying things that are like higher dimensional beings that will be like even beyond time definitely member brain so like I'm between like in like the three-dimensional world in which like Hopper, Joy, and Will, and all of them are right now living in like basically these monsters like will be having their like form of that of like dump and like faceless monster form and everything like would be these like higher dimensional beings like what they look like in like the three-dimensional world would be that would be that alone like their true form would be like even beyond that it's like limit with dimension so like I'm gonna maybe like the spider like form might actually be that their multi-dimensional form so also like the possibility that okay. So like that's like my good remedy. So like I'm going like in like the so like my that's in the parallel world as well. Like basically since like Nancy and Jonathan have seen like the monsters in like the parallel world as well as like the face of monsters. Nancy have seen like the monster in like the parallel world as well as like the face of monsters. Like I'm going like so like the parallel world as well. Like definitely exactly like the real world. And the citizens since like Joyce as well as like Hopper have seen and they all of them have been in like looking exactly like how they did in like the real world, like the bad world as well. So like the bad world as well as like the real world. Exactly like the real world, like the bad world as well would be like three-dimensional world, but like I'm just like there will be like even higher dimensional worlds out there, and I'm just think that will be other multi higher dimensional worlds to which like I'm just like these monsters might have access to. That's definitely my very impression. So the parallel version of Brana in like the parallel world might have created like this extent might have been totally different to like the real world Brana so like his experience might have been far too advanced and I'm not like get like that advanced experiment like I'm like using that advanced experiment he might have been trying to like turn 11 in like the parallel version of 11 into like a higher dimensional being and he might have possibly messed up with that experiment and might have that way turned 11 while he might have turned 11 into like this higher dimensional being, like he might have also possibly turned 11 into like the like kind of monster as well. Uh, due to possibly like things going wrong, especially when but like I'm like these monsters might be like beings that transcend even like the dimension of time, and this will be the professor reaching for like I'm looking systems like what the map of the I'm remembering like definitely these monsters will be right now in the system will be growing from within building and will be getting gaining more and more access to like to Will's body and mind. Like I'm looking like this would be like the precise reason for like basically Will like so it will be like the knowledge of these monsters that like will be right now be able to like access and I'm looking like that will be the precise reason for like what Will believed as this like past memory like basically that like all those memories like happening right now, like when feeling that it's all happening right now would be due to that will getting that temporarily possibly getting that access of like that power, that higher dimensions of like that monster where like that transcends even time definitely my representation. So like this would be like will like and now memories that will is like having. It's definitely my legendary introduction right now. So like the minimum frame position right now as for like will right now like even by experiencing like the now memories like will probably been unable to like express like the now memories through words like I'm going to do precisely because of like the now memory possibly being like even beyond words like since like the higher dimensional scenario would be where like the now memories will be like happening. So like since it might be like a dimension beyond time, beyond like the third dimension, like but this will be the precise reason for like the three-dimensional human in like will only unable being unable to like put forward as for like the concept of like the now dimension is universal picture. So like which like I'm like in which if it isn't like will is like that exceptionally good at like drawing sample something will possibly being able to like draw it out. Right now with like Joyce that will right now drawing trying to like draw like the now memory sample and like will right now possibly being able to like draw it out is like the scenario that I'm looking at the very end of the Cambridge. The playing experimentation right now with like my right now telling like because understand how like will have heard the in like the upside down and like in the like the clue to like solving not just will but like also in like darkness like the clue to like solving all situations with that will and everything. Definitely one of the dimensions that are usually what will might have back then during like the night after like Halloween like what will might have heard that sound of dark that will might have heard would be like no sound but like in that upside down that will have seen like everything the sound of dark might have been not actually dark distant dark but like everything like there would be a great number of like these like baby size like formed of like these monsters that would be like that will be growing and like leading like all the uh, for the great number of humans who might have been like in like the battle world, the battle version of humans in like the battle world that might have been abducted by all these like monsters. Definitely correct. And that would be the reason for like all those skeletons in like the Hawkins world, in like the battle world and everything like it would be all those like dark size like baby monsters like literally throw that thing on like which was potentially like Will's mouth where like Will was in like the battle word Will was affected and taken into like the battle word and was had like things over like Will's mouth. And back then while Will was in like a trap like situation like everything like all those humans like great number of humans might have been like abducted in like the battle version of humans in like the battle world. They might have all like a great number of them might have been affected along similar manners and maybe like they might have been specifically chosen also like a positive error. So maybe like it might have been specifically humans with like high IQ alone that might be like might be it might have got chosen by these monsters who like basically have like new sets of baby monsters. Definitely memory impression. So that's also like a possibility that I'm also bring. So like my memory is that like there would be a great number of like the parallel world itself is like would be infested with like not only that with like a giant spider like monsters, but also with like a great number of like faceless monsters as well as like with like a great number of like great number of like dark like baby monsters as well. It's definitely my memory. It would be that sound of like one of those like dark like baby monster that is gay. Like the sound of that might have been what like Will might have heard during Halloween night when Will had seen like the bad word from the real world. The leaf might be the impression. So like I'm looking at it would be and I still think remember the impressions is like basically all the pumpkin crops and everything like crops and trees like in like the surrounding 3 miles radius from like the energy laboratory of like Brenner is what getting destroyed. Like I'm looking like since like the gate to like the parable is like still even to the present is like remained in an open like gate within like Brenner's energy laboratory. I'm looking like through that open gate like I'm looking like all this like great number of baby dark like monsters like might be like slowly might have escaped from like the battlefield and through like that tunnel from like Brenner's energy laboratory through which like 11 had escaped from like Brenner's energy laboratory in like the very beginning. I'm remembering through that tunnel like all these like dark like baby monsters might have escaped through might have by now like a great number of them might have escaped through like the real world and might be like it would be there but that would be like the destruction of like all the crops and all sorts of like crops like great number of crops and trees in like the 3 miles surrounding area outside of that surrounding area, surrounding that the laboratory. It's definitely my brain. So like I'm referring, like it might be like the very same sound of dark which like Will had basically heard during like that Halloween night while seeing like the parallel, which might be like the very same voice of Dark itself that basically like even Hopper as well might have heard back when like Hopper was like initially like inspecting like the pumpkin field of like one of the farmers that leave the impression. So like there when like Hopper had seen like scarecrow like right before seeing like the scarecrow like basically Hopper even hearing like some sort of like a noise like basically that sound as well might have been like also belong to like the sound of like one of like the baby dark like creatures, especially my favorite. So like these dark like creatures might have already a great number of them might have spread all through out like the real world already. Especially when we bring and if specifically my prediction that like these dark like creatures will be eventually growing up to be like the faceless monster and their probably their final form would be like that of like the giant spider like creature. Definitely my secondary impression right now. Then still think the way the impression that like this since like these dark like creatures like initially are like extremely small and tiny like everyone like while they might have escaped from like the parallel through the gates and like the gates of like the parallel world through like the end of the laboratory Brenner and might have entered into like the real world through like the tunnel within like Brenner and laboratory while they were making that escape from like that movement from like the parallel gate like the parallel world to through the tunnel to the real world through like Brenner and of the laboratory like during that like I'm wondering like even though the are like CCTVs like I'm wondering like definitely these like creatures like these monsters like dark like monster like creatures might be seriously like them being so extremely tiny that like I'm wondering like none of like the people working at like that energy laboratory might have like even more not only the people working at that energy laboratory, but also like the people monitoring like the CCTV might have failed to like basically to spot not even a single one of like these like tiny dark like monsters that they were like moved from like the parallel world to like the real world through the tunnels of like from the laboratory, especially my president.